Hi, I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, based here in beautiful, sunny Southwest Florida. As many of you know, I shoot a lot of real estate, a lot, like 1,000 homes per year. And if you're thinking about getting into a career in real estate photography, be sure to check out my upcoming seminar, Camp Miles, which covers how to become a commercial real estate photographer in your local marketplace, as it's one of the few fields left in professional photography where you can break in relatively easily and start making a pretty decent living. So be sure to surf on over to darrenmiles.com and check that out. Now, onto the review. Lens manufacturers have been doing some extraordinary things lately, like putting prime-like apertures into zoom lenses, putting wider apertures onto longer telephoto primes, and coming out with even more extreme wide-angle lenses that claim to control distortion at the wide end. So in that vein, we take a look at yet another ultra wide-angle lens. This is the latest from Sigma in their Art Series line. This is the 12-24 f4 Art Series lens. And if this lens is anything like the other Art Series lenses, we should expect great build and sharp optics. Now, if you're into architecture, landscape, or real estate photography, this is just another option in a growing list of wide lenses. So how does the Siggy 12-24 fare? Well, let's find out. So first up is the build, and like virtually every other Sigma lens in their Global Vision Initiative line, the 12-24 is built to a very high level. It's like Porsche and Aston Martin got together and had a baby, and boom, out came the Sigma. It's stylish and it's sleek and it looks extraordinarily professional. It's also stout and it's pretty heavy. This thing tips the scale at 2.5 pounds, or just over 2.5 pounds. Now, the lens is designed for full-frame cameras like the D810 that I haven't made it to here, but it can also be used on crop sensor cameras, but the field of view is going to get cut down a little bit to, for example, 18 to 36 millimeters on a Nikon and 19.2 to 38.4 millimeters on a Canon. The focus ring is really thin, but it's grippy and silky smooth, though I do wish it had a bit more resistance. The zoom ring is grippy and has a really professional feel, and it's also buttercream smooth with, to my hand, just the perfect amount of resistance. The autofocus manual focus switch also clicks into place with a loud snap. The cup is just overrunneth with quality. Now check out that massive front element. It's round and bulbous and yells from the rooftops that this thing is a wide-angle lens. And that also, unfortunately, means that this lens does not take the standard screw-on filters, which is kind of a bummer. On the inside, it's a pretty complicated formula of 16 elements arranged in 11 groups. And included in that formula are some FLD, or fluorine low dispersion elements, which, according to Sigma, improve image sharpness. I guess we'll have to wait and see. There are also 9 rounded aperture blades for some nice out-of-focus bokeh rendering, but keep in mind, as I've mentioned several times on previous ultra-wide-angle lens reviews, you don't often buy a wide-angle lens like this with silky smooth bokeh as a primary consideration. And given that we're this wide at only an f4 aperture, we're not going to get the best out-of-focus bokeh rendering from a lens like this, just the nature of wide-angle. Now, speaking of the aperture, it ranges from f4 to f22. The lens is also weather sealed, but at this price point, that's basically expected. Now, given this is part of Sigma's Global Vision Series line of lenses, that also means the lens is compatible with the Sigma dock, a nice touch that allows Sigma to update the lens's firmware on occasion to keep up with the latest camera bodies, in addition to making micro adjustments with regard to focusing at various focusing distances. Now, one last thing, Sigma has done something really interesting this time around with the lens cap. It fits on the front element here, or the front of the lens, very snugly, and it has like this almost suction kind of adherence to it, so it's kind of hard to remove, and it's a much better design, in my opinion, than the much more expensive Nikon 14-24. I think it works really well. It's also unlikely that the lens cap will just fall off, say, in the back of your car when you're in transit, which again, I can't say for the Nikon 14-24 cover. So anyway, all in, it's a really nice combination of high-quality construction, good looks, silky smooth focus and zoom rings, meaning, for build, the Sigma easily earns a 10 out of 10. So next up is AF speed and accuracy. And like many wide-angle lenses, most of the time, we're not using these things for sports or for fast action. Sure, there's always an exception or an application that will require fast focus, but with wide-angle shooting, more often than not, we're taking our time and we are deliberately setting up a shot on a tripod, and we don't have a need for split-second accurate AF. It's nice, but it's not a deal breaker if the lens doesn't have it. Moreover, speaking for myself, I'm usually in a room, set up on a tripod, and I'm just taking my time because I'm framing a very technical shot. Fast autofocus is great, but if it takes a second or two to lock focus, it's really not a deal breaker, nor does it have a whole lot of impact in the way that I shoot or on the task at hand. Moreover, I'm also trying to get everything in focus. I'm literally aiming for edge-to-edge pin sharpness across the frame, which means I'm stopping down to f5.6 to f10 to ensure a sharp image, because these things could end up on the cover of a brochure or a magazine. And given that we're shooting with a wide-angle lens with such a wide depth of field, accurate focus at f8 is practically assured even if the lens isn't spot-on accurate. That said, however, the AF motor that Sigma has included with this lens is lightning quick, quiet as a mouse, and very, very accurate. Again, you can only get so much depth of field at f4 and 12 millimeters. And speaking of which, the minimum focus distance on this lens is just under 10 inches. That's pretty close, and if you really need to blur your backgrounds at all, you're going to need to get practically on top of your subject with this lens to do it. As for focus accuracy, if your subject is at any distance, you're almost assured accurate focus. But just a quick demo, I'm going to focus around, and again, I'm at f4, so in order to get the focus distance meter to travel any real distance, I'm going to get really up close and personal with the tripod here, and then I'm going to focus on something else that's far away. So here goes. Up close. Bam. Far away. Bam. And then up close again. Bam. I mean, I think you get it. In the end, it doesn't get any faster or more accurate than this, meaning that there's really nothing to fault. So for AF speed and accuracy, the Sigma gets another perfect 10 out of 10. Next up is optical quality and the quality of the results. And here's where the rubber meets the road. And I have to say, overall, I'm impressed with a couple of minor nits. From f4 onwards, I'm getting edge-to-edge sharpness across the frame, except for the very extreme edges, where there is in fact a noticeable fall-off in sharpness. But by f8, even the extreme edges are more than acceptably sharp. The center of the frame cuts like a Ginsu knife at all apertures. It's awesome. Chromatic aberrations in high contrast areas are barely noticeable and really aren't all that relevant. And performance against bright light, well, it's really good, especially when compared to the Nikon 14-24, though truthfully it's not quite as good as the Tamron 15-30, as the Siggy definitely shows some flare bubbles that we didn't see with the Tamron. Lastly, distortion and vignetting are surprisingly well controlled, except at 12 millimeters, where I was definitely getting some distortion issues if certain shots weren't lined up correctly, which truthfully would be true with any wide-angle lens, but it's especially true at 12 millimeters. But that said, don't take my word for it, see for yourself. As with all of my reviews, the next 2 to 3 minutes will be a series of stills and video clips showing off the results with the Sigma 12-24 Art Series lens, and I'd say that Sigma has a winner on its hands. So last up is value. And if there's a bit of a sticking point with the 12 to 24 millimeter, it's its value. For starters, most of the competition in the ultra-wide segment has an f2.8 aperture, everyone from Nikon to Tamron to Canon, even Tokina. So that's something to consider. Now granted, only Canon has a lens that gets this wide, the 11 to 24L, and it too maxes out at f4. As for the others, they're not quite as wide, but they do a better job if you like to shoot wide in dark environments, like say at a wedding, as the f2.8 aperture of those lenses certainly would come in handy in those kinds of low light situations. The real value of the Sigma is 12 millimeters, as that's about 25% wider than 16 millimeters and 15% wider than Nikon's 14 to 24. So I think it's only fair to compare the Sigma against the other ultra wide lens, the Canon 11 to 24, where we get the same aperture, but I'd argue the Sigma's build quality is actually better, and the Sigma is slightly more than half the price. So what you have to ask yourself is, if you're considering an ultra wide lens, do you really need the extra 4 millimeters? Speaking for myself, I took a look at the EXIF data, and I found that I was shooting the Sigma at 12 millimeters the majority of the time. And I also found that the edge performance of the 12 to 24 was noticeably better at 12 millimeters than the Canon 11 to 24 was at 11 millimeters. So the real value of the 12 to 24, again, is the fact that we can get as wide as 12 millimeters. Now, if you're a Canon shooter considering the 11 to 24L, you're only giving up 1 millimeter on the wide end for just slightly more than half the price. And at $1,599, the Sigma isn't a cheap lens, but when compared to its closest competitor, the Sigma is a relative bargain. So for value, the 12 to 24 gets a 9 out of 10. So to wrap up this review, we gave the Sigma 12 to 24 Art Series lens a 47.5 out of 50 and our highly recommended rating, the final word. So if you're in the market for an ultra wide angle lens, as in wider than 14 millimeters, and you're shooting on a full frame camera, there's a new and very competent option available in the marketplace today with the Sigma 12 to 24 f4 Art Series lens. Granted, it only goes to f4, and there are in fact some distortion and extreme edge performance issues at 12 millimeters. But for the bulk of real estate and architectural shooters out there, Sigma has created another winning lens for yet another genre of photography. Though it's not perfect, and frankly, most ultra wide angle lenses aren't, the Sigma is incredibly competent even at $1,599. I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, based here in beautiful, sunny Southwest Florida. If you like these reviews, please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, happy shooting.